Treating the stranger in the room should be handled carefully. They might serve as the model for your future innovation. Isn't it funny how the roles are reversed? One moment you're the strange person that everyone talks about at breakfast, and the next you're the one whose energy they secretly like. They're imitating your habits and citing your words like scripture and fashion trends, and all of a sudden the person they ignored is the one they're watching in HD quiet. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. The twist is here. According to psychological research, jealousy and adoration cause nearly the same brain regions to fire. This implies that some of your alleged detractors may actually be confused supporters. Yes, as if it were their favorite Netflix drama, the person who rolled their eyes last year is now binge-watching your progress. And you know what? You didn't really alter all that much. You simply stopped becoming smaller. However, this is what caught them off guard. Fans weren't what you were after. In a performance-based environment, you were occupied with healing, changing, and being yourself. You were magnetic because of that. They are unable to stop watching because of this. The most absurd thing is that the person who is now secretly adoring you may be the last person you would ever think to date. The former supervisor who undervalued you. The ex-partner who claimed to have moved on. Someone who formerly labeled you too intense, or perhaps a buddy who left you is now meditating to your old Instagram posts like they're heavenly downloads. Hold on tight, because today we're going to go deeply into why you've become a fan in disguise and why it feels like the applause is greater when it comes from unexpected lips. Let's take a broad approach. First of all, they are drawn to you because of your light, which emerged from destruction. They are attracted to your brightness today, but they are unaware of the price you paid to shine. Your strength, serenity, and glow, the qualities that others most respect in you today, were not innate. It's what you constructed from of debris. This is not how you woke up. This is how you had to get up. You have undergone spiritual surgery to become the person people perceive and appreciate today. After years of dismantling, rebuilding, suffering, and being silent, they still showed up. They're appreciating your brightness. But destruction was the source of that light. Glow-ups are typically thought of as physical, but yours was spiritual. You experienced deep healing, which is why you radiated differently. You made it through things you couldn't even articulate, and you went within rather than outwardly resentful. You developed, and now they're witnessing that. It's not only that you appear more attractive. It's not only that you have a magnetic energy. Something about you carries the emotional, mental, and perhaps spiritual burden of someone who has died and risen again. It is impossible to teach, purchase, or fabricate that type of change. It's felt and earned. They are unable to stop watching because of this. They sense something different around you, even if they don't express it verbally. Respect and a little perplexity are involved. Because how can someone who has experienced so much still be so peaceful? How can you be warm but shrewd enough to see through falsehoods, gentle but unwavering? There is no victim energy in you. You are a quiet type of victor, the sort that doesn't have to make a big show of itself, the sort that communicates through your presence, your quiet, your boundaries, and your stance. They are now attracted to you, not only for who you are now, but also for how you got there. You didn't become ostentatious, flamboyant, or theatrical. You developed authenticity, and you become the actual thing in a society where everyone is pretending to be confident and calling it healing. Admiration is growing as a result. As a result, those who had never clapped before are now watching with their lips shut and their eyes open. You made presents out of your suffering. Your ashes glowed because of you. And those who used to ignore you are now unable to turn away. Secondly, they are not casually curious. It's a yearning for spirituality. They're more than simply admirers. They have an inexplicable yearning. They don't just pay attention. It's not a passing curiosity or interest. It's a yearning for spirituality. Something in them is roused by something in you. Something they haven't even realized they've been looking for. Your speech is different from everyone else's. You don't act the same way as other people. You move calmly, purposefully, and with inner wisdom. And it is what has them captivated. People are desperate for authenticity. They have been given phony drive, phony influencers, phony connections, and phony strength. But something changes when they see you. It feels different with you around. You are more than simply another person in the room or another voice on the internet. You are a heavy burden. Your energy is truthful. You're not trying to impress anyone. And that's just what makes them impressed. You already know who you are, therefore you don't need to prove anything. The portion that speaks to the part of them that feels disoriented, uncertain, or unanchored is that knowing. They're not only impressed with your strength, they long for your clarity. They are curious about your knowledge. They wish to experience your emotions. They're silently hoping you'll show them the way in, as if you've opened a door they've been banging on all their lives. This explains why someone you wouldn't think is keeping such a tight eye on things. Their souls comprehend it, even if they don't themselves. Even if their head hasn't caught up yet, their spirit is aware of the frequency you're radiating on. The problem with chosen ones is that people are challenged just by your presence, not because you make an effort, but rather because you bring to light the things they have hidden within themselves. They realize who they could be if they quit acting when they see you. If they began to heal, if they ceased to perform. You're not well known. You don't make a lot of noise. You're not as polished as everyone thinks you should be. You're genuine, though. Real is also uncommon. They are attracted to that rarity. They are more than simply admirers. The fact is that they are reacting to a certain frequency. That's the goal. God is working through you in that way. They know they don't want to stop feeling what they're experiencing, even though they don't completely comprehend it. Third, the person who made fun of you in public is the one privately observing you. The person who used to make fun of you in private is most likely the same person who now admires you. And it's so crazy because of it. At one point, they made jokes about how strange you were, rolled their eyes at your dreams, and secretly wished you would fall flat. However, they are now silently observing you with wide eyes because the person they underestimated is outgrowing all the constraints they attempted to place you in. They truly admire you. However, they will never say it out since doing so would require them to acknowledge that they were mistaken about you. And it is too much for their ego to bear. They were surprised at the increase. Not just any growth, but growth that defies explanation. You didn't adhere to their plan. You didn't grow resentful. You didn't remain in the role that was given to you. You changed. They find it unpleasant that you changed in ways that make them confront reality. While you were quietly doing your own business and leveling up, others were acting out of pride, fear, and ignorance. They're still getting used to the fact that the person they used to make fun of is now someone they secretly respect. You turned into everything they said you wouldn't be. They are now the ones who are receiving quiet alerts about your updates. They are the ones who hear what you have to say, attempt to mimic your delivery, and strive to understand how you accomplished it without pleading for approval or acceptance. They didn't think you would become influential. They are now unable to resist persuasion. The surprise is that they're not evil individuals. At the time, they were simply too narrow-minded to see your magnificence. They were intimidated by something you carried that they were unable to describe. They reacted with sarcasm and shade because your sincerity made their masks uncomfortable, not because you sought to make them feel exposed. That was how they defended themselves. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. They can't deny what they see, though, now that you've risen above it all. Someone chosen, someone uncommon, someone honed by the fire. Their quiet is thought rather than ignorance. They now know who you are, and they know what they did. That's right, someone you never thought would be a fan is suddenly one. They used to make fun of your path, but now they are closely examining every step you take as if it were a road plan for their own success. Fourth, you made them aware of something they were unaware of. You disturbed them in addition to impressing them. You were not there to amuse or win favor, but your presence had a deeper effect. Years of performance, anxiety, and false identity had buried a part of them, but it came back. You kept quiet about it. Nothing was forced. Simply by being who you are, something within of them was triggered. They were unaware of the existence of the light until it came on. You evoked no admiration. An awakening was caused by you. As soon as they saw you, they began to doubt the things they had been taught to believe. They started to question why they were leading such a phony, burdensome, or disjointed existence. Why their calm is usually fleeting and their confidence seems fake. You unintentionally challenged everything they held to be true about identity, strength, and worth when you entered the room. They were shaken by it. You possess a unique quality in your spirit rather than your looks. You have a strong sense of alignment. You are aware of who you are. Your calm, more than any wounds, is a testament to the storm you have been through. People are not merely drawn to that vibe. It transforms them. It tests them without you having to speak. They begin to reconsider everything. What they say, how they act, and who they are when no one is looking. All because they came upon you. Ego is not at issue here. Praise is not the point. It has to do with purpose. Truth always dispels illusions, and your energy brings truth. Something that had been dormant for years was awakened by you. You brought back memories of a past self that they no longer had. Before life hardened them, before fear made them shrink, before guilt forced them to fake, there was a version that was honest, brave, and pure. They are now uneasy in the nicest possible way. They are thinking, which is why they remain silent around you. They are watching you because you evoke a feeling in them, not because you are ostentatious. You don't serve as an example for them. Their reflection is you. And before the world informed them differently, they realized who they were meant to be when they saw you. Fifth, you are evidence that mystery endures in a superficial society. The game was not played by you. You didn't seek attention or make an effort to be noticed. You stayed in your lane when everyone else was busy sharing, proving, and performing. You recovered in secret, made little changes, and let your development take place away from the spotlight. You become something unique and enigmatic as a result. You became the one who didn't need to be loud to be recognized in a society where many sell authenticity for praise and overshare for approval. You were magnetic because of that quiet. People find it difficult to understand you, and they are drawn to you for precisely that reason. You don't provide them with simple solutions. The box does not fit you. They can't tell if you're calm or cunning, gentle or strong, tranquil or deadly. And they keep returning because of that tension. They scroll past you 10 times before returning because there's something about you that doesn't seem right. You leave a lasting impression. In actuality, your mystery isn't a tactic. It is the outcome of genuine healing. You wanted to stare deeply, yet you didn't stop chatting. You discovered that quiet had strength, so you stopped talking. You continued to grow while allowing people to speculate, guess, and project. The same individuals who used to disregard you are now fixated on the fact that they are still unsure on how to interpret you. There's a sacredness to not knowing everything. Being untouchable even while you're seen has a strong hold. Instead of leaving blueprints, you left breadcrumbs. Not your soul, yet glimpses were exchanged. And that self-control is more respectful than yelling ever could be. People are fed up with noise, filters, and attempting to maintain a facade of perfection. You reassure them that having layers, being private, and not having to explain oneself are all okay. You demonstrate that being invisible in spirit does not equate to being unknown in detail. What you don't tell says everything. Thus, the fact that they don't know your whole tale makes them crazy. They can't turn away from you because you remained concealed long enough to become unusual in a society when everyone is hooked to exposure. They believe that you might be easily dismissed as number 6. But you can't be shaken. They assumed you would fold. They believed that you would crumble under stress or vanish as a result of the gossip. They thought you were weak because of your quiet. They assumed you were done because of your remoteness. They were unaware, however, that your absence was a tactic rather than a sign of weakness. You weren't hiding. You were creating, mending, listening, and learning, and now they realize how badly they assessed you. Your name was brought up in discussions intended to damage your reputation. People made up narratives, embellished anecdotes, and attempted to paint you in a negative light. Some merely observed, some agreed, and some laughed. None of them, however, anticipated that you would still be standing taller, clearer, and more rooted than before. You didn't react in a chaotic manner. You didn't constantly defend yourself. You allowed the falsehoods to continue. You were steadily and quietly rising while they were busy attempting to discredit you. And now the same voices who used to criticize you are murmuring again, but this time with respect. You weren't noisy, but you were steady, so they're saying, they're not what we thought. Although you were forceful, you weren't hostile. After you cleared your name, you didn't pursue. You developed into the type of person whose presence, without uttering a single word, clarifies the situation. Being complimented did not give you the unwavering vigor you now possess. It resulted from weathering storms without receiving praise. Despite being misinterpreted, challenged, and assaulted, you remained resilient. You silently, and without having to be noticed, you ascended one piece at a time. Now that you've shown that true strength doesn't work, those who attempted to discredit you are forced to appreciate you. It persists. They were perplexed by your tenacity. They were outraged by your tranquility. The limits of their own character were revealed by your reluctance to fall into their traps. The aim was to bury you, not to see you blossom, so now they're the ones who are perplexed. In actuality, they didn't anticipate you being this steady, observant, and undamaged. They might have stood by your side, but instead they attempted to undermine you, so now their respect is tinged with sorrow. And you simply continued to rise. You were their mirror, number 7, and they were unable to cope with the reflection. The fact that you were odd didn't make them chuckle. They were afraid, so they laughed. They weren't prepared to examine you as a mirror. Your openness, your vulnerability, and the way you present yourself without a disguise. Everything they were attempting to conceal was revealed. To survive, they were acting, feigning, and blending in. Here you were, unadulterated, unrefined, and unashamedly you. They would never acknowledge how much that frightened them. You didn't adhere to the plan. You meant what you said. When it didn't seem right, you left. You displayed feelings they had been trained to repress. They made fun of you for doing it since they couldn't do what you did. They gave you labels that were too deep, too many, or too distinct. Your freedom emphasized their bondage, not because it was real. You weren't being judged. They were responding to the feelings you evoked in them. Exposed, your genuineness made them uneasy, not because you were mistaken, but rather because you brought back memories of a past selves they had given up on. You evoked feelings in them that they had suppressed, and they struck out rather than leaned in. They made jokes rather than inquiries, because it was simpler to make fun of you than to face oneself. However, the script has since been reversed. It's past time. A few of them have grown up. In the same manner that they previously made fun of you, others have been broken by life. All of a sudden, you make sense. Your depth doesn't appear dramatic all of a sudden. It seems sensible. You don't appear to have strict bounds. They appear to be essential. Your quiet isn't strange anymore. It's strong. Now they see you weren't being over the top. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. Because they didn't know how to be true themselves, they couldn't take it when you were being genuine. However, life has a way of making individuals humble. They perceive you differently now that their masks have fallen off or they are worn out from their acts. At last, they realize that what they believed to be your oddness actually made you entire. The best thing is that you never needed retribution. You didn't respond negatively to what they said. Your life speaks for itself. You continued to develop. You remained loyal. They are now silently gazing into the same mirror they once fled, seeking to discover the same type of truth within themselves. 8th, your way of life has turned into their covert pattern. Even if they won't say it aloud, you've taken on the role of the benchmark, the unspoken norm, and the covert force driving their rapid change in behavior, depth of thought, and conviction in speech. They often go over your stuff, but they don't republish it. They take screenshots of your quotes and store them away without offering any commentary. They hope no one sees who lighted the route as they pursue you in the dark. They used to ignore your attention, your boundaries, your quiet, and the way you lived. They referred to it as strange, excessive, or superfluous. However, they are now secretly reproducing it. Now, the same people who made fun of your discipline are attempting to establish routines. Those who scoffed at your spiritual discourse are now claiming it as their own. They observed your consistency in the absence of applause. They saw your arrival, development, and alignment without pleading for notice. You also became their silent instructor at some point. They refused to acknowledge it since doing so would require them to acknowledge their error. It would entail admitting that they disregarded the truth that was always in front of them. They can't give you your flowers because of your pride. However, they are too arrogant to express their admiration for imitation. Your tone has weight, so they imitate it. They adapt their language to your level of enthusiasm. They carefully and gradually realign their belief systems, always tracing you, but never naming you. Without acknowledging that you discovered it first, they are attempting to locate what you did. You did more than only motivate them. They were rewired by you. They didn't hear your sermons. You demonstrated them. You proved that there are other ways to live a life that is sincere, profound, spiritual, and unapologetic. And even in quiet, that type of power endures. They don't just mimic your style. It's your stuff. That's why it persists. You turned into the silent blueprint they said they didn't require. And even though they might never acknowledge you, your influence is evident in the way they now move. It may be seen in the way they deliberate before speaking and hesitate before responding. Because you showed them how to be themselves without even trying. They are gradually becoming more of who they were destined to be. Nineth, they previously attempted to destroy what they now admire. The fact that they now appreciate the same qualities in others that they once criticized you for is almost comical. Once viewed as weakness, your tenderness is today hailed as emotional intelligence. They were uncomfortable with your independence, but today they see it as a strength. Your discipline, which they saw as strict or domineering, is now viewed as motivating, as well as your instincts. They are now attempting to cultivate in themselves the precise thing they derided and disregarded. They didn't despise those attributes. When someone reminded them that they had work to do, they just detested seeing them. In actuality, you were never the issue. Simply put, you were ahead of your time. They felt vulnerable due of your clarity. They had to examine their own lack of limits because of your self-respect. They attempted to bring you down because they were unable to meet you where you were. When individuals feel threatened but don't know why, they act in this way. They go after what they lack the bravery to become yet. You weren't too sensitive, too intense, or too unique. You were just working from a location that they hadn't yet arrived to. Because it caused discomfort for the shadows inside them, they categorized your light as excessive. However, they now view those qualities differently after life has humbled them, shattered them, or awakened them in some way. They now see your independence as wisdom, your discipline as self-mastery, your intuition as divine, and your gentleness as power. The things they attempted to destroy in you are now the subject of their conversation. Content that sounds like things you said years ago is reposted by them. They are at last accepting the traits you have always possessed, but not in yourself. Because they would rather flaunt those qualities in someone else than own that they destroyed them in you out of ignorance, envy, or fear. And that's the unpleasant reality. The exact thing they are presently looking for was broken by their attempt. You were never too much. Simply put, you were too early. Before they were prepared to understand the lesson, you set the example. And now, whenever they compliment someone else on those qualities, it only confirms that you were correct all along. Number 10. Your handling of disrespect has plagued them. They didn't think you would remain composed. They anticipated a breakdown. They anticipated rage, mayhem, and maybe even retaliation. Instead, they received something for which they were unprepared. Your height, your maturity, and your quiet. You didn't yell. You didn't reveal anything. You didn't make an effort to match their rudeness. You just overcame it in a way that made them unable to speak. And now they can't stop thinking about that moment. What you didn't say, rather than what you said, caused them discomfort. Since they expected you to respond, they were looking for a scenario to exploit against you. They were prepared for drama, fire, and evidence of your instability or resentment. However, you turned into the mirror they weren't prepared for. You weren't weak because you didn't participate. You become memorable as a result. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. They are aware of their treatment of you. They are aware of their disregard for you. They are aware that you had every right to respond with a clap, but you chose not to. You made the dignified decision. You opted for progress over gossip and for quiet over pettiness. You let them go believing they had won. And it haunts them for precisely that reason. Because they now understand that they lost a unique item. And when the loss is handled with gentleness rather than violence, it seems more profound. To establish your value, you didn't need to become boisterous. Your growth speaks for you. What your lips didn't say, you let your silence tell. And that type of self-control and discipline made a bigger impression on them than any insult could. They didn't anticipate the storm that you were. You didn't, not because you were angry. They sit with it now. The way they attempted to provoke you and the way they breached boundaries. You replied like a king or queen. You were strong, not because you were attempting to appear powerful. Something in them altered at that moment. It made them reflect on their own actions. They had to respect you because of that. They still consider how you handled things, even if they never express it. And it humbles them each time they recall. Because you don't simply keep your calm when someone treats you disrespectfully and you don't put up with them. You demonstrate that you were never on the same level in the first place. 11. It is a kind of spiritual repentance to be admired. Even if they may never express regret verbally, their deeds speak louder than words.